morning, everyone. I'm coming back after, I think, 5 or 6 years. I was here back, and it's coincidental that this is the 5th edition of World Quality Report. And I had a chance to be part of it as a part of a study, which I feel from my testing background is something very deep, very insightful. And it covers the entire globe about the trends in terms of where exactly is testing. So when Pradeep reached out to me saying that crossing the chasm, from assurance to confirmation, do you have something to say? And I felt that the timing in which, where the technologies are exploding, the expectation from the testing as such are just moving from just not the assurance, but even to risk a business bet, saying that I would like to really look into your eyes and say that I'm ready to release this software for production even before the time. And in that, the expectation of testing has changed significantly. And we will talk about some of these things in next 30 minutes. So over the 5 years, this report is fairly evolved. And what we've done this year is reached out to about 1,500 participants, more than 20 countries. And they were asked about 42 different questions. And I go back, possibly 2 more questions we'll add in a lighter way next time. And these were open-ended questions as well as these were closed-ended questions. And what we wanted to really get a sense from these questions were issues which are strategic. And when we talk about strategic issues, they are primarily around organizations trying to think as to how do I really structure a testing organization. And report is mostly, our research is mostly centered around the user organizations. But after going through this for the last 5 months, I felt that even service providers could equally take some cues in terms of positioning their services or in terms of trying to understand where the market is or where the customer requirements are. So I feel the content is really useful for both. Either you are delivering services to your business units as a user, or you are service provider to some of your clients or the end customers. So it works absolutely both ways. In terms of the breakout, what you see, significant number of C-level, and we wanted to make sure that we are having a strategic view of the budgets, organization structure, what kind of KPIs would you really give to the head of quality or a chief quality delivery officer and so on and so forth. At the same time, really get a feel from the ground up. So what does a tester feel about testing mobile applications? Does he or she feel adequate in terms of having access to the devices? Is there a right infrastructure available for mobile and so on and so forth? So what you see is a very well spread out 1,500 participants across the globe so that we are able to get a view right from the strategic level, which is the highest CXO level, to somebody who is really helping the development team even define the requirement of how the testing should look like. We wanted to make sure that the sectoral breakup is equally good, because what I find in my own experience is that you find some of the industries adopting very quickly versus some of the industries want to see what other industries are doing. And if I were to see that how industries really stack up against each other, possibly financial services and telecommunications sort of lead the pack in terms of adoption, and other industries try to follow in terms of what these industries are doing. So we represented them very well in terms of understanding sectors. And I'm not going to be talking about a specific sector pullouts, but when I talk to some of my clients, I do talk to them and I ask them that, help me understand in insurance industry, what are they saying and how is it different than others? And which I do as specific sessions when clients request. But this data is available across the industries, has a good representation in terms of industry. Second point I wanted to make is this report is available on a public domain. So if some of you want to go download World Quality Report, it's available. Please share it with clients, because we consider that between Capgemini and HP, this is our annual investment on something which we want to give it back to the industry by conducting such a deep research. We don't want to keep it to ourselves. It's for you to really take it and interpret it, share it with your clients the way you like it. This is something about the countries, and you'll find that, and it's interesting that looking at the Capgemini's history, it started primarily with the European focus. We increased our focus in terms of North American business. And the 5th report, we realized that possibly every continent or every country out there wants to know where this is heading. So So this is complete in terms of all the countries that we have, a special pull out in terms of China as well. And when we look at China, people want to know, first of all, and for this particular audience I wanted to share, that we've been hearing a lot in terms of, is that an alternative sourcing market? What's happening in terms of the local market within China? Can India and China coexist? And possibly testing services is one of the volume service which can be industrialized by clients and service providers to leverage China. So we wanted to include China also in this report. All right, so I'm going to cover this in terms of findings, recommendations. I want to talk about 6 key topics that we really covered and really open it for a Q&A in terms of what are some of your thoughts. So our first observation was more on the structure. And what we wanted to know is how centralized or decentralized this organization should be. And this has been a key question. And whether you call it as a test center of excellence or whether you want to call it as a shared service QA, a key structural aspect here is it centralizing or decentralizing? So our first observation, it is more centralizing. What we also asked them is, we compare a 3-year data in terms of, we are in 2013, what was it like a 2010, 11, and where are we? And when we asked about budgets, we found that there is a significant increase in terms of the budget which is allocated to software testing area. And that is now closer to almost 25% of the entire services budget is going to the testing services, which is huge. And that is up from almost close to 12 to 15%. Now, I see this as an analyst from 2 perspectives, that either clients are categorizing the right labor and the asset cost under testing. Second, there is really an increased focus to the testing from a CIO perspective. And third, there is additional budget actually given to the testing organization. So all the 3 areas have really given that rise in 3 years from somewhere between 12 to 15% to close to 25% money now been earmarked for just the software testing services. The third area, and which is a reason for us to ask that, because I think it is in the self-interest of Capgemini, because just like the World Quality Report, if you go to www.0.0.org or .0.com, that's another contribution which we are sort of creating a thought leadership since last 4 quarters, and that's on left shift. And I think all of you have hands-on experience would agree that the early engagement of the testing teams right from the requirement cycle creates a sort of a success in terms of a quality. So our question was based on how early do you start? And it was based on whether it is requirement, when the clarity is there, when it is before going to the production, or sometimes even after going to the production, somebody calls us to really fix it. So you see various answers in terms of what it really happens. But key trend again, that the organizations are realizing that left shift is absolutely critical. Thinking of a test organization, environment, strategy, team, and members is right at the requirement stage. And organizations have started taking steps that when you really start putting a project team, there is an equal composition of the real members from developer, tester, requirement, business analyst, who can really form a composite team. So that's an important aspect. So 3 things we saw: centralization, increase in budgets, and the third aspect is a left shift. That means getting it as early as possible in the cycle. No surprise. Now, mobile testing, if I were to take a trend, an interesting aspect when I talk about mobile testing, I feel that we should be doing this survey almost every month rather than a year, and we'll find different results. That's absolutely, and I'm saying it's more than doubled. Earlier, less than 20% organizations were doing it. Now there are 55, 65% organizations are testing applications on mobile. Now it sounds very simple that everybody should be doing it. But when we ask some fundamental questions, and I'm going to cover that a bit later, and it's interesting that what expectations are from business perspective and what technical teams are really geared up. So there is lots and lots of opportunity here from a service provider perspective. At the same time, from IT to set the business expectation as to how soon, how quickly can you get it. And the fundamental shift, as you will agree in mobile, is that if I take typical business or enterprise applications, the life cycle could be anywhere between 9 months to 18 months to 24 months development, rollout, rates, and so on and so forth. Mobile, 60 days, less, 90 days if you're lucky. So how do you really make sure that you are able to first understand requirement, configure, deploy, test, and get it as error-free as possible. So very interesting findings here. Now cloud, that's a very interesting area, and a lot has been talked about cloud, and these results surprise me particularly, and I'm going to pause it and not say much here in the findings. We'll talk about it when we get there, but there is some interesting data in the cloud here. Agile is another very interesting area which we asked, and this was from our specific focus on the European and North American market, because when it comes to agile development and testing, you ask questions and you'll get different answers. So when we ask people, what do you mean by agile? It's very region specific, very industry specific, but we wanted to focus on this topic as well. So after learning this, what were our really recommendations? Because we wanted to give back to all the readers, saying that we conducted this survey focusing on the 6 key areas, parameters, which are strategic, transactional, as well as technology focused like mobile. So the first one, what we are really saying is organizations are willing to pay 25% of the budget. What they want in return are the areas where you can tie the software quality matrix in the business matrix. And this is critical. I can share an example of one of the large telcos as to interesting discussion which I had with the CIO. And he said that at some point, I would really love if you start talking about quality of software, what you are really helping to manage our business operations, linked to the number of phones returned by users. Now that's something which I said, okay, it looks interesting. And from a telco industry, you would find that depending on a phone manufacturer, the return rate could be anywhere between 3 to 9 to even 11%. At what stage? So a completely new model will have a higher return rate versus a new improvement of the same model will have a less. But the point is, a business demands now saying that, are you really willing to take a look at application, which is my business KPI, that the number of reductions in returns directly helps me to get customer loyalty, it improves my bottom line, can you really tie? And I wanted to share this as one example, and you would find that the industries in which you operate, don't be surprised if you are asked that number of defects, post-release defect, type 1, type 2, everybody gets that. But how quickly can we adapt that to really marry it with the business outcomes? And that's what the first recommendation we had. Second is the centralization part, and here I want to be a bit cautious, because what I found is that when we talk to particularly global 1,000 organizations, they have multi-region, multi-business unit organizations, and sometimes they are multi-industries. And what I mean by multi-industries is organizations having manufacturing as well as retail distribution and some energy or some entertainment play. And each one of them has a mobile and the social adoption in terms of what they want to do. So while I fully believe that the centralization is important of the QA, but to what extent is a very client-specific issue. And that client-specific issue could be adopted by way of region, by way of technology, and could give an example as I was talking to one of the CIOs, and my recommendation was keep the SAP part separately, because that was their significant part of their IT spend, and keep all the non-SAP separately. Now, depending on the alignment of the key stakeholders, you might choose that the SAP will remain between the business units and all non-SAP will be separate, and then you centralize and you will still get some benefits of efficiency. So my recommendation here is, while we want to improve the QA by centralization, again, it's a very company-specific discussion. Understand their scope, their span, and then really use it as what you would like to do. Second, specialized function for mobile testing. I think most of the organizations are setting up. There is increased awareness about using cloud. I'm going to talk about that. And interesting research finding, what we found is, apart from the labor costs, there is a lot more investment going in the tools and infrastructure. And that should be a great news for all the people from the tools companies and people who sell lots of hardware gear and the boxes. And it's surprising that 42% of the money will be still spent on the environment, tools, and infrastructure. And only balance is going to be spent on the labor. And of course, integrate testing into the agile projects. So now I'm going to quickly cover, I'm not seeing the ticker here, so I'm a bit at a loss in terms of, but I'll still go ahead in terms of what the findings are. So 6 main sections that I talked about. Now here is an important aspect about budget. And what we're finding is 40% is going in terms of hardware, 28 tool, and 23% labor. And this is in a 3-year relationship, a percentage budget shift going from close to 12 to 15% to about 25%, and which is again a good news. Now, here are 2 conversations you could have. So if you are representing business and if you are in charge of a QA function, this is something you can take and say that, hey, this is December, this is budget time, how about giving me some more money for next year? This is the right conversation. Second, if you are a service provider, I think a wraparound opportunity for not just selling of tool services, but overall in terms of positioning your QA is a significant opportunity. Second, we asked the question in terms of transformation is a very interesting word, and it means different things to different people. But we asked them broadly in terms of keep the lights on, doing the same things, make sure business is running, versus developing something new or transforming your business where you are. And I think you clearly see that there will be more and more dollars to the transformation part. 5% of this year, another 4% will go in terms of 2015. So again, a takeaway for a user and a service provider here, that it's much easier to get budgets assigned if you ask that it is for a transformation work. But then you have to be really doing something which is a new development or a new rollout. Can't use that fund for the application management or the release testing mode. So again, very interesting area, no surprise here. The third, and this is, I think we had a self-interest here in terms of asking this question as to percentage number of test centers of excellence, how many organizations have plans in place, how many have fully operations, and how many have not thought about at all. And it gives a very interesting data point. If you see 4% to 19% in 2013, that's the news. I think everybody is really joining that bandwagon. But the second data point which I like is no plans in place. There are still 26% organizations who have done nothing about it. And that's where I see this glass half full and half empty kind of scenario. So this is the opportunity to consolidate. That's the opportunity to really go after. And again, you can use this data based on where you are from a user organization as well as service provider ones. Transforming the testing organization. Now, TCOE and the managed testing services can be used together, and most of the service providers really recommend an approach like that. This is a shift in terms of buying pattern, and if you really look at the outsourcing overall, providing for a fee for the services versus providing for the outcome to providing to a linkage to the business outcome is a stage which we are going. And that's clearly evident from this data that 46% of the executives said that they are currently tasking someone to really do this entire testing business from managed testing services perspective. So that really aligns with centralization of QA, that aligns with the increase in budgets. Okay. Mobile testing. And I wanted to share, apart from just what respondents are saying, this is the industry. And if you look at it, by and large, every industry that we talk to, there is between 70, 80, and in some industries, they have even doubled. If I look at it, telecom, 30 to 56%, 35 to 61% in healthcare. So this shows first the adoption. Second is the realization that so much business pressure is there to have access on mobile and the like devices, but our business is ready for the applications to be deployed. So this data shows that across industries, this is absolutely, absolutely on fire. Okay. Now, I want to go back a couple of years back, and when we started saying that there suddenly became a very increased focus on process. Everything we wanted to measure. We wanted to show it by phase of software development lifecycle. We wanted to show it to all the teams in terms of where do we stand. I'm seeing the pressure in like few quarters in the mobile business that significant expectation is access to devices, access to expertise, access to the right process and tools. So if I were to say 3 things that you could take away from the entire report, what everyone is asking right from business users to team leaders who manage mobile testing teams are only 3 things: that I can't find adequate trained resources, I don't have the right infrastructure, and when I mean infrastructure, number of devices to really test, and the third area is the right processes which I can use consistently to really give the output. And I think that's coming across very clearly across industries. Okay, I'm going to go through some of this fairly quickly so that we have some time in terms of Q&A. Mobile testing, I covered that. Okay, cloud. And I said I was a bit surprised here because I was expecting that so much that I read in the various analyst reports as well as when I talk to clients, it has not shifted much. So 2012, we had 22%, 2013, it has actually dropped 2%. And 2015, we project at 26%. So we ourselves got in together and we wanted to know more about this data because this is surprising. What happened to cloud over the years? Why is it going down? And we realized that organizations that we talk to look at a cloud from two areas. Is one which I would say applications or their businesses that are touching client, which is more of a business to consumer in their sense, and which are more internal applications, which could be finance, business to employee, and so on and so forth. The greater deployment of cloud is more in the front office. And again, that's interesting because the solutions like whether you take Force.com or the similar ones, that are driving the user expectations to deploy cloud in more front office first and then. And the data reflected here is everybody has possibly some way of testing whether do I have a cloud deployment, do I know what it takes, do I have the right security and the infrastructure to really take care of that. But when we look at the 1,500 respondents, that is still not able to move the meter in terms of front office to shift in the middle to the back office. And that's really the reason why it is staying really stagnant. And we expect, again, that 26% is going to stay in the mostly the front office part of the cloud. Now, when we ask the reasons, again, if you look at the data security, requirement risk, performance, I think these are some of the things which we have heard from the cloud deployment, and they are very consistent here. Okay, now Agile, we had a self-interest here that how many people are really using TPI, which is again Capgemini Society methodology, TMAP, in terms of what we do. And some of the respondents were 35% almost said that yes, they are using the TMAP principles. But this is varied, and I felt that this data set, particularly from Agile testing, is not able to give something which I could share, but it can be used just as a data set of what 1,500 respondents really say. Okay, test infrastructure. Now, this area, and I feel that we ourselves see this as a significant opportunity, particularly with our alliance partners. And I want to tie it back to my first observation in terms of Global 1000, their structures in terms of regional business unit and SBU alignment. And what we find is the applications environment which sit within the BUs typically align with the test environments. Now the opportunity here is if 42% budgets are going to go for a hardware, there must be a significant consolidation opportunity here. So key question to ask is, are you really optimized on a test environments? Are you really using all the licenses that are sitting on your enterprises, and are you really using optimally? And I strongly feel that all the research what we have found, there is indication that we could use this as an opportunity for recommending that in consolidation in some case, optimization in some case, and to really get more from what they already have invested. And in this area, again, I feel that with the report showing for 13, almost 42% money being spent, and the trend for 2015 is there will be more and more money to be spent. Test environment is going to be a key area for focus, at least from our side, which is the service provider perspective. Okay, so I have a 5-minute warning, but I want to just summarize here by the recommendations again, which I covered really briefly after the key findings. The first one, demonstrate the QA to the business linkage. Second, start the mobile testing. Pay attention to the cloud. It's important from a front office client-facing applications. Test environment, test data. There is a lot of money today. There will be a lot of money tomorrow in terms of investment, and integrate the testing in the Agile projects. A quick summary, Mark Buenen, who is the Vice President at our Netherlands office, was my co-author in this subject. We started a research about 5 months back, and there were 40 other subject matter experts from sector and the region perspective who really contributed to this report. So I want to thank you all of them, and personally that has been a great enriching experience for me to be involved in this type of study. So thanks everyone, happy to take any questions if you have.
Check. Thank you, Makarand. Thank you for sharing with us the World Quality Report. We'll throw the questions open to the floor. Do I see any hands going up or, yeah?
I see two of them here.
Okay. Excuse me, ladies and gentlemen. If you just tell your name, company, and keep the questions brief, please stand up so that everybody can see.
Hi, my name is Vivek. I'm from GE Healthcare. We were talking about decentralizing and centralizing the testing organizations in a given organization. What would be actually a good mix? Like some people are highly focused on the technology. Let us say automation, a person is good in a given tool. He's not really bothered about the domain he's working on, and some people are highly domain specific. In the healthcare industry, I would say diagnostic imaging is one area, and then somebody's really good at DICOM standards or stuff like that. So what would be a good mix of having a centralized testing team in place?
A broader question, but I can give you some little bit more insight in terms of life sciences perspective as to the key question to ask here is how do you IT and business, how closely you assess the maturity of IT for the life sciences perspective. And when I say maturity of an organization, as to, let's take a CIO of your business unit. Is he or she part of the executive committee for the business unit? And if she is, I would say yes, it is, IT is sitting side by business. And that could be a greater case for centralization. But here, take another business unit, and it could be diagnostics versus imaging versus, manufacturing versus whatever you want to say. Another unit where IT is still used as a provider and not really sitting in the exec committee along with the business leaders. And there I would say take more cautious approach in terms of centralization. So in the first case, possibly you'll see 3/4, 60 to 70%. In the other case, maybe just 20 to 30%. So it's very specific to the organization, and you would see the percentages vary between the same company. And you mentioned GE. I think it's a great example of what a global conglomerate could be and our adoption could be. A very good question.
Okay, thank you. The gentleman out there.
Yeah, this is Venkat Shishadri. I handle the delivery for Tesco's banking division. So I just wanted to understand what's the key driver for moving the test environments back to offshore. Is it something that the clients, or you're seeing a lot of corporates moving their testing infrastructure offshore, or they want to build something in their near shore? And what is the key driver for bringing it offshore if they are?
Okay, interesting question, and I think though testing is part of the offshore, I feel that, and you mentioned Tesco, right? I think my response to this question is, first of all, the maturity of global delivery model. I think we don't have to prove it to anybody how well it works. So that's the ability of tools to secure, and when I say secure the environment, it's not just physically, but by way of network, by way of virtualization. I think we reach to a level whether you are sitting in Croydon or you're sitting in Bangalore, you are equally closer or equally farther. So that realization is there to business executives. So keeping that in mind, I think the increased comfort of that is really driving the test environment setup to be offshore. Now my point is, what we need to really look at, and we tend to take a more polarized view of whether it is North America, UK, and India. But my point is what clients really look at is some business demand that I want a proximity, then there is a more business case for a nearshore center. So my recommendation is it not so about onshore, which could be India or other. It's more of what business wants and what's right. And it could be premise in the same time zone, premise with a 1 to 2 time zone different, or India and onshore could be an answer. And I responded, I realize, very broadly, but I think that's another important topic which we try to get a pulse on as to where exactly is global delivery, what clients feel, how comfortable they are in terms of industries which they operate. And I find the willingness or not so willingness to really deploy test environments offshore comes from that thinking within an organization.
Thank you.
Does that make sense? Right.
Okay, last question, please. I'm sorry, that's all the time I have.
Hi, my name is Prashant, and I'm from Target. My question is, it's really good to see the the IT spend on testing going up. But you also mentioned that there is focus on shifting left, right? So do more upfront so that you can avoid a lot of testing. So these two seem to be a little different from each other. So is there a sense that, why is it people are investing more in testing while also doing a lot of work upfront?
Okay, great question. And there is another piece of, I think that's a public research. I don't remember the organization, but that's one of the European organizations, which we use for our left shift approach, which says that if you find a defect in requirement, it takes about $150 to fix it. But if you find the same defect in production, it takes $15,000 to fix it. That means there is a 100x proportion of money you put on the table for not tracking that. And that's really causing that left shift. So when there is a more and more realization of left shift, the only way you have to invest proactively in the teams. Those are not just technical testing teams, but teams that understand some part of the business domain or the industry sector. And that's where the more and more budgets will go to. So if you see these two responses in isolation, they may look a little bit contrary. But when you look at them together and some of the external research that I quoted, I think everything comes together in terms of what it's about.
Thank you.